Hello everyone, are you ready for the final countdown, the big showdown? It's finale time here at the DTM and we're at the Hockenheimring and it's gonna be super exciting, that's for sure. And the weather, who knows whether it's gonna stay dry or not, it's unpredictable, but it's gonna make it even more exciting. Fact is, the man who is leading the championship is Mirko Bortolotti. He's just getting into the car. You can see him around, if you sneak around there, we can see him getting into the car, focusing really hard because obviously it's all about the championship. He is 15 points ahead of Kelvin van der Linde. Theoretically, it's also still possible for Maro Engel to maybe get the title because he's 20 points behind Mirko, but it's definitely going to be a super tight championship battle, that's for sure. And we're super excited to get started with the qualifying. So everyone, here are the commentators. Enjoy.
Thanks very much indeed, Verena. Good morning, everybody. Welcome along then to the final weekend of DTM 2024. 56 points still available in the championship and only 20 points between the top three. As Verena said, Mirko Bortolotti with his nose in front, 15 points ahead of Kelvin van der Linde, and 5 points behind Kelvin is Maro Engel, who, come what may, is going to have his best ever result in terms of a season finish in the DTM Championship. Last year he finished 10th and that was his best so far. He's already wrapped up the GT World Challenge Europe Championship in the Sprint Cup with his teammate Lucas Hauer. They won that at Barcelona last weekend, so he arrives here on a high and almost with nothing to lose. Maro Engel, that's the driver they are trying to catch. So Mirko Bortolotti got his first win of the season last time out at the Red Bull Ring, a win and a fourth, and he comes here with his advantage of 15 points and looking good in the free practice sessions yesterday. But the weather played its part yesterday. We had a wet first free practice and then a drying track for the second practice session, which we saw the track getting quicker and quicker right to the end, and several drivers didn't get to put a really quick lap time in at the end because there was a red flag about 3 or 4 minutes before the session was due to end. And we've had some overnight rain as well, which has dampened up the track. We've just had one of the support series out trying to dry up the track in their qualifying session, but it's still not totally dry, so it's my favourite kind of qualifying session, one which starts with a slightly damp track and where the track gets quicker and quicker every time somebody crosses the start-finish line. It should be a thrill ride. We've got 3 points available for qualifying on pole, 2 points for qualifying second, and a point if you qualify third. And given how close it is in the championship, not only is this session going to be crucial for getting the grid position for the first race of the weekend, but also for those additional championship points. Mirko Bortolotti having already picked up 17 points through qualifying this year as the best qualifier on average. That is the equivalent to more than a third place finish and has given him a big leg up in the championship. All three drivers then looking to get their first championship title. There is a driver that knows how to do it time and time again, the three-time champion René Rast, who's fourth in the standings but mathematically cannot now win it. The crowd then here in their droves already coming in, queuing in a couple of hours ago to get into the circuit. There's an air of anticipation here at Hockenheim. It's always a great weekend, and with the championship on a knife's edge, it's going to be even better than normal. So we're about to get going into 20 minutes of qualifying to set the grid for the first race of the weekend. We're here at Hockenheim in the commentary box overlooking the final complex where the grandstands are starting to fill up now, coming into the arena section. And as they come past us over the start-finish line, we look to our left and we can see the run into turn one, and there the cars all queued up, ready to come out of their pit aprons and come out into the pit lane, ready to start the session. My name's Chris Hartley. I'm here to talk you through the course of what's going to be a dramatic weekend in the DTM. And alongside me, as always, it's good morning to Brian Oliver.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're as excited for this as we are. Definitely a sense of anticipation in the air. The mist is rising above the Hockenheimring circuit. The crowds are pouring in. The stands are starting to fill up. They're all coming to see whether that man can end this weekend still at the top of the points championship, or will Kelvin van der Linde in that car there come and ruin his dreams, or will it be Maro Engel who, as the dark horse in this, comes through to sweep through and take this championship? It could be any one of those three. The pressure is certainly on Mirko Bortolotti as the person who is being hunted, and the emphasis on Kelvin van der Linde and Maro Engel as the hunters. It's going to be one of those qualifying sessions where the quick times come right at the end. It's going to be a slow burner, but I reckon the last 5 minutes of this session are going to be epic. Every car now pulling out of the garage, out into the fast lane, out onto the track. That initial installation lap to get the heat into the tyres and the brakes.
Free practice one yesterday in the wet conditions. Ayhan Nguyen was quickest in the Manthey EMA Porsche with a 1 minute 48.728. It was wet, not really wet, but it was wet. Mirko Bortolotti was second quickest in the wet, and Kelvin van der Linde was third quickest, 13th quickest, and with the spin coming out of the final corner during the session was Maro Engel. Then on a drying track, which started out damp, Mirko Bortolotti, towards the end of the session, put in the quickest time with a 1 minute 38.184. He was 2/10 up on Thomas Preining, who was complaining that the car was mishandling in the wet conditions, but was very good once it started to dry out. So he was second, and Ayhan Nguyen, his teammate, was quick again, third fastest in the Porsche.
Ricardo's on slicks. So full push now, minimum 1 time left.
Right, the message to Kelvin van der Linde from his race engineer: your teammate, Ricardo Fella, he's gone for slicks, so he's the guinea pig for the Abt Sportsline team. Clement Schmidt has gone out on slicks. Jules Gounon, we welcome to the DTM Championship. He is standing in the number 4 HRT Mercedes this weekend at short notice for Luca Stoltz. Luca, unfortunately, unwell this weekend. We wish him a speedy recovery, but it is great to have Jules Gounon on board for his debut, a double Spa 24-hour race winner, a 3-time Bathurst 12-hour race winner, and a 2-time GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Champion, as well as a former ADAC GT Masters Champion. The French driver based in Andorra will be in that Mercedes. He looked pretty good yesterday as well, well versed at driving Mercedes GT3 cars, even if he is new to the championship. So they're the ones that have gone for slicks. Everybody else has gone out on the wet tyres, but Brian, I don't think it's been too many laps into this session before they're going to start to think that slicks is going to be the way to go, and certainly at the end of the session they will all be on slick tyres.
Yeah, I can already see a dry line appearing on the pit straight as I look out the window, and maybe just going out on slicks to get the brakes up to temperature. But as you say, going out wet to get the brakes up to temperature, and then coming back into the pits to put the slicks on. It's certainly not going to be a slick running all the way here. I was just looking at Jack Aitken and Luca Engsler. I think Engsler was trying to get a bit of position on the track, and I don't think Jack Aitken particularly wanted him to come past. It looked like they were racing already. We're only 2.5 minutes into this session.
Yeah, some of the teams were using one of their 5 days of private tests that they have per driver, and you can only have 5 days of testing outside of a DTM weekend per driver, and some of them saving it for Hockenheim, including Kelvin van der Linde, who was here last Thursday and set the quickest time on a dry track. But Luca Engsler was quickest on the Tuesday on a wet track in the Lamborghini, and the Lamborghinis all looked very good in the wet. However, the forecast is that we're going to get dry racing today and tomorrow. The lap itself here at Hockenheim these days, just over 4.5 kilometres long. They get up to a top speed of 265 kilometres an hour, over 160 miles an hour. The quickest part of the circuit is out through turn 5, which is the flat-out left-hander, big arcing curve at the Parabolica, before they slam on the brakes down into the slowest corner on the lap, the Spitzkehrer, the hairpin at turn 6, where they drop down to second gear and 55 kilometres an hour. The lap is divided into 3 so that we get sector time. Sector 1 is fairly short in the dry, only about 22 seconds. It goes from the start-finish line, takes in the Nordkurve, turn 1, turn 2, the Bernie Ecclestone curve, and then the little right-left flick through turns 3 and 4. That's sector 1. Sector 2 is the one you've definitely got to get right. That takes in about half of the entire lap time. The run flat out through the Parabolica, and then through turn 6 to 11, and then the last sector takes in essentially the stadium section from the Mobile 1 curve through to the Sachs curve, and then through to the Sud curve, where they come back out after 17 turns around this clockwise circuit to end the lap. So a huge session this. It's also the last hurrah for Audi as a partnership with Abt Sportsline, because Abt's at the Red Bull Ring announcing they're going to be running Lamborghinis from 2025 onwards, which they've already run in the Nürburgring 24 hours for the last couple of years. And they are parting ways, albeit on friendly terms, with Audi after this weekend.
So Reining, Guven, Sheldon are boxing for slicks.
Interesting this, isn't it? Race engineers and teams keeping an eyebrow on exactly what everybody else, all their rivals, are doing.
It's all about the strategy, isn't it? So clearly the wet weather shod cars, the wet weather tyre shod cars at the top of the times at the moment. But as I say, we're still just getting up to temperature. The 149.4 for Kelvin van der Linde, and not really representative, but he's still staying out on the wet tyres. I'm quite interested to see this, really. I thought that they would probably be onto slicks earlier than this because the track does look reasonably dry. Having said that, yesterday in free practice, we saw how slippery it can be when you get offline. We saw Mauro Engel spinning on turn 17. He kept it out of the barrier, but you have to get up pretty early in the morning to see Mauro Engel make a mistake normally. But yes, adhesion clearly at a premium here.
Just keeping an eye on Jules Gounon because he's out there on the slick tyre. Ricardo Fella likewise. Jules is a bit further into his lap. He's completed 2 sectors in the black Mercedes. So we'll see what his times are like on the slicks compared to those on the wet tyres. Mauro Engel comes past then. He goes quicker, slightly quicker, 149.797 to go second quickest. It's been an absolute best first sector for Kelvin van der Linde. I guess if you've got time in a 20-minute session to get some laps in on the wet tyres and then switch to the slicks later on. So it's not a bad idea to get some banker laps in, I would say, because it takes longer than expected for the circuit to dry. It's reasonably mild for the time of year at just under 14 degrees, the air temperature here. Track temperature 12 degrees, so it should dry out relatively quickly. We'll find out, but Kelvin van der Linde is ditching the wet tyres and going to the slicks. He's quickest at the moment with a 149.4, but the qualifying lap record around here is 13 seconds quicker than that, a 136.4 set by Lucas Auer back in 2022. So Jules Gounon came into the pits at the end of, well, 2/3 of the way into his lap. He aborted the lap, so we didn't get to see what he did on the slick tyre, and Ricardo Fella is, I think, still out there on the slick, but hasn't yet completed his lap. No, in fact, he bailed. Has he bailed for the pits? I think he's bailed for the pits as well. No, not yet, but he still hasn't come around. So we still haven't got an idea if the slicks are any quicker than the wets at the moment, but we are about to find out because more and more, including the driver second in the championship, Kelvin van der Linde, switching to that slick tyre. There is super sub Front Pereira standing in once again this weekend for Christian Engelhardt, who hasn't been able to recover from this knee operation he had mid-season. So Front Pereira back here. He was second quickest of those that tested. Not everybody tested, but second quickest in the wet last weekend. So we'll see how he gets on in the Lamborghini. He's pushing hard at the moment, that's for sure. Just coming into the Mobil 1 curve, which you have to be very careful on the exit here because you get sucked very quickly into that gravel trap. Edgy Gouin just locking the brakes there ahead of Front Pereira on the way to the Sachs curve.
Christian Engelhardt has announced his official retirement from skiing as a hobby as a result of that knee injury. He says, this is not going to happen again because this has robbed me of what I love, which is motorsport. And Frank Pereira has very much enjoyed having the opportunity and has shone. He's been really, really good this year in that car. But Christian Engelhardt looks on. Car has just peeled off into the pits is Thierry Vermeulen. He is the first driver to have had a cancellation of his lap time for exceeding track limits on turn 1. We saw a lot of that in free practice yesterday, and that would be critical, particularly for the front runners, if they exceed track limits on a hot lap.
Right, so up to second place, still on the wet tyre, Frank Pereira, 149.7, just under 0.4 of a second behind Kelvin van der Linde. Pereira second, Engel third, Auer fourth, Aitken fifth, and Bortolotti sixth. So all the championship contenders are in the top 6 at the moment, but you can take a photo of this leaderboard at the moment in qualifying and try and remember it, because it's completely going to change in the last few minutes of this session once that track picks up the temperature, once the circuit moisture and the dampness is gone, and they all start to charge around on slick tyres. So you're right on board with Bortolotti. Stayed with the wet tyre for now, hasn't improved in the first sector, but because it's not really wet, because it's damp and greasy, Brian, even on the wet tyre, they're quite twitchy, the cars, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are, aren't they? It's a lot more slippery than I thought it would be out there, to be quite honest. But yes, even on the wet tyres, you can see them really just struggling for grip into the corners as Mirko Bortolotti just bumps across the curb, goes to the inside of Thomas Preining. But still looking for that grip. And what's Thomas Preining on? He had a big twitch in the background as well. So he's on slick tyres, desperately trying to get the heat. And you can see how quickly Bortolotti left him behind. Kelvin van der Linde still taking it easy, 6 seconds off the pace through the first sector. Thierry Vermeulen in the Ferrari on slick tyres last time around did a 151.8, which is 2.4 seconds off the pace of those on wet. So that's the first sort of
signs of what the gap is like at the moment between the wet and the slick tyre. And at the moment, the wet tyre is still just about the 1-2 beyond, but it will, once it switches, it will completely switch and it will turn around very quickly. So we've got to keep an eye on Maro Engel, Lucas Auer, Jack Aitken, and once he gets up to speed, Kelvin van der Linde as well, to see what the comparative times are going to be like. Kelvin, who finished in his first season of DTM in 2021, third in the championship, but was going for the championship right until the very end of the season at the Norris Ring. He's had a couple of disappointing seasons since, 9th and 8th in the championship. This then, a big opportunity for the South African, and in a sense, he's in a kind of nice position here. You'd always want to be leading the championship, of course, but if you're not leading the championship and you've still got a big chance, you're only 15 points adrift, it's quite a nice position to be in, I'd say, mentally, from that driver that's doing the chasing, because he's almost got nothing to lose, whereas Bortolotti has got the championship lead to lose.
Yeah, we've seen Kelvin van der Linde kind of looking a little bit stressed in some of the previous rounds, but he's a lot more laid back this weekend. As you say, he's kind of got nothing to lose, really. He can go hell for leather, and I think that when he's not nervous and with his back against the wall, actually Kelvin van der Linde is probably at his most dangerous. So he knows what he's got to do, and he's got, as we said, nothing to lose. He's going to give it everything. He's out there trying to get the heat into those tyres. I'm really interested that Mirko Bortolotti has still not pitted for slick tyres yet, because if it does turn into a slick track conditions, he's got to come in, get those tyres changed, get back out, get them up to temperature, put in a push lap, and he's got to do all of that in 8 3/4 minutes. So time's starting to run out. And
he's going slower, not quicker, on the wet tyres. So his best lap came a few laps ago, 1 minute 50.5.
Slicks is a 206.
I
don't think it's going to work. So how many minutes do we have to change?
Maro Engel, so I don't think it's going to work. I don't think slick tyre is going to work.
Gosh, so who thought that this session could be a wet tyre session? I mean, we were saying at the beginning, this is going to be a slick session. Well, Mirko Bortolotti is proving that not to be the case, because he's on the wet weather tyres, gone quickest of anybody in Sector 3. I think this is the big first shock of the weekend.
Take it back. Bortolotti had a couple of easy laps, but he has still got something. He was just waiting for the moment. He pulled the trigger on that lap and has put in his best lap of the session, a 1 minute 50.1. That's 4/10 quicker than he went before. So he's now gone up to 4th place. So the championship leader, 4th on the grid at the moment. The driver 2nd in the championship, Kelvin van der Linde, on provisional pole position. And Maro Engel, who is 3rd in the championship, is 3rd. They're all on the first 2 rows of the grid as it stands. Still a long time to go, 7 3/4 minutes. But Maro Engel has bailed for the pits. He said the slick ain't going to work.
Wow.
We've got to go back to the wet tyres, and he's come in now to give himself a chance to get some potentially better laps in. And Bortolotti has set the absolute best first sector time through the first 4 turns, 24.5 seconds. So he is now pushing. What's he got to find? He's got to find nearly 7/10 of a second to get onto pole position, but 3/10 of a second would get him onto the front row of the grid. Kelvin van der Linde, meanwhile, still on that slick tyre, is, I think, going to do the same as Maro Engel, isn't he? Yeah, he's going to battle for the pits. So too Nicky Tim coming in just ahead of him. So it is not drying up anywhere near as quickly as they expected. They are miles off the pace on the slick still, and it's just not happening. So the wets, they all come back to switch to. Mirko Bortolotti has played this absolutely perfectly, hasn't he? Stayed out on the wets. He's got more laps in than anybody else. He's already got, of course, the tyres up to temperature, and he's on a good lap here with a personal best through the 2nd sector. Can he squeeze up now ahead of Maro Engel? At the moment, it is van der Linde, Pereira and Engel, the only 3 drivers ahead of him. Accelerates out of the final turn at the Sud Curve. From 3rd gear up to 4th, up to 5th. Over the line he goes. Is it a better lap time? Yes, he goes onto the front row of the grid. So the championship leader up to 2nd. The driver 2nd in the championship. Van der Linde, the only one ahead of him now.
Have SSR Performance pulled out a masterstroke of strategy? We can see the wet tyres are back on the Maro Engel car, but time is running out. A little over 6 minutes remaining of this session. Needs to get back out. Well, he's in 4th place. We've got 1, 2, 3 in the championship, filling the top 4. Only Frank Pereira is spoiling that particular party. But a lot of work to do, a lot of thinking to do in less than 6 minutes.
From Pereira, spanner in the works if the grid stays like this. What's he in? He's in a Lamborghini. What's Mirko Bortolotti in? He's in a Lamborghini. Could be a useful ally. Not that team orders are allowed, but not that they're in the same team either. With Grasser Racing Team running from Pereira's car, SSR Performance running the Bortolotti car. He's just done a 24.9 through the first sector on this lap, which is 4/10 of a second away from the best first sector time, which he himself did on the previous lap. So it doesn't look like this one's going to be a flying lap for Bortolotti. Looks like he's backed off a bit on this one. Just letting the tyres cool down. He's probably trying to hunt for some damp patches on the circuit to keep those tyres from overheating. And he's driving this his third full season. Can he round out the weekend as the newly crowned DTM champion? Bortolotti at the moment, he's on course for 2 points. Van der Linde, though, he's on course for 3. So the gap would come down to 14 points in the championship between them both going into the penultimate race of the series anymore. That's it. That's all I've got. And he probably won't be able to go back out now and send in more quick lap times with less than 5 minutes left on the clock.
And interestingly, another set of wets waiting for him if he does decide to go out. Of course, we're focusing on the top 3 in the championship. There's some notable names who have yet to record a competitive time, none more so than outgoing champion Thomas Preining. His quickest time so far is a 2 minutes 12 seconds, so a long way off the pace. He's down in 17th place. So Sheldon van der Linde is yet to put a benchmark time in as well. So a lot of drivers still struggling to find the heat, to get the heat into the tyres and find that grip, as we look at some lovely slow motions of Mirko Bortolotti, very much pulling a masterstroke here.
Yeah, Andrew Guwen back in 18th, quickest in the wet yesterday and third quickest on a damp, drying track, but back in 18th place at the moment. He has just done a personal best second sector, though, but he's still on an out lap.
Looks like we have 2 push laps, Mirko. It looks like we have 2 push laps.
Well, they got him in and out quick, so time for 2 push laps, I reckon. So Borto with a fresh set of wet tyres on. The focus very much on those blue eyes of the Italian driver. But you're on board now with Kelvin van der Linde, who's just done a personal best through the first sector, 24.6 through that first 4 corners. That is only a 1/10 and a half of what Bortolotti did. This second sector is the big one. This is the longer sector. This is where Kelvin was quicker. Bortolotti's been quicker at the start and end of the lap. Kelvin's been the quickest in the middle portion of the lap at the moment. 49.2 is the absolute best through that middle sector, and he does a 49.3. So overall, he's a couple of tenths down. He's not going to improve his time, but he doesn't need to at the moment. He's on provisional pole. The worry, though, is what Mirko Bortolotti might be able to do now that he's gone back out on some new wet tyres.
We've only got 1 car out on track with slick tyres, that is Max Powell. So everybody has now gone for the wet tyre strategy. That caught us all off guard, didn't it? Now Kelvin van der Linde looking to extend that lead further at the top of the timing screens at 149.420 last time around. Is he going to beat this one? It looks as though he might. 149.386, so no, it's not an improvement, but still at the top.
Yeah, Max Powell did a 2 minute 11, so I think that 151 we saw from Ricardo Feller when he was on the slicks, that had come before he put the slicks on, because nobody's broken the 2 minute barrier on the slicks, and that's, as you say, only one driver that's got the slicks now, and I think Max Powell has even switched to the wets now, so they've all gone on the wets on this greasy, damp track. The weather has just not played ball so far this weekend. It might be dry for the rest of the weekend, but we have had rain-affected sessions every time so far. At least the surface has been wet for some of the sessions. We only really had proper rain in that first free practice yesterday. Right, Andrew Guwen goes to the top of the times by nailing it through the last sector. 1 minute 49.364. There you go, from almost last to the top of the timesheets. Guwen, by 22 thousandths of a second, is on pole. That means that van der Linde will only score 2 points, but still 1 more than Bortolotti, who's third at the moment.
Well, that's rather ruined the party, hasn't it? That wasn't in the script. Ai-Chan Guwen always shines in the wet. If you excuse the contradiction in terms. There's Jack Aitken. He's done a personal best in Sector 1. Not so in Sector 2, but still looking good for a competitive lap. At the moment, he's in 10th place. So is he going to improve on this? His best so far is a 150.396. So out he comes across the line. This is going to be an improvement on his earlier time. So he pops up. It's going to be, well, it's a P6. So it's not an improvement on the grid, even though it is a quicker time.
Ai-Chan Guwen has not been on pole so far in his 2 full seasons in the DTM. He qualified on the front row at the Hockenheimring, second on the grid last year. That's his best so far. So Guwen on pole in the Porsche provisionally. 149.364 seconds. We're into the final minute of the session. Lucas Auer has done personal best through the first 2 sectors. Luca Engstler, you're watching now likewise. The Mercedes just ahead of the Lamborghini coming into the Sachs curve. And Thomas Preining is on personal best sectors as well. So it's still got time to change this. And these two drivers are going to get through and get another lap in as well. Preining is going through with 27 seconds to go, and he goes to the top of the times ahead of his teammate, 1:49.245 seconds. What about Lucas Auer? He comes out of the final turn. Luca Engstler likewise, and they're going to get through. They're going to squeeze one more lap in as well. That might be the last two to get through. Maybe Guwen in the background could get through. Auer goes second. Engstler goes on to pole position, and in the background, Arjen Guwen sneaks through over the line with 5 seconds to go, and he goes back to the top of the times. Here we go, a drying track on the wet tyres. It's Guwen quickest, Engstler second, and Preining third.
Tommy, all in. This is the lap. All in. This is the lap.
This is the lap, but Kelvin van der Linde has just set the absolute best first sector. He's 5th at the moment. Bortolotti is 7th. And sandwiched right in the middle of the pair of them in 6th place is Maro Engel. So the 3 championship contenders, none of them scoring points at the moment, but they're all glued together, 5th, 6th and 7th on the grid. Van der Linde, though, wants more. He wants points. He wants to be ahead of Bortolotti. He'd like to replicate the race victory he got here in 2021. Absolute best in the middle sector as well. And the middle sector is the one. That's half of the lap time. He's just got to hold it together now through the final sequence of corners. Up ahead there is Jules Gounon, who's on a good lap as well, just coming into the final 2 turns. So the Mercedes there in the background. You might just see the Audi of Kelvin van der Linde about to go into turn 16. Where is Gounon going to go? This is the checkered flag for him. The time is now up, and Jules Gounon goes 7th. But the one to watch in the background is going to be Kelvin van der Linde. Can he get pole position? Can he get 3 crucial points for the championship? He dips for the line. He goes across the line. He's on pole. 1 minute 48.797 seconds. But there are still others coming through on quick lap times as well, including, remember, Thomas Preining, Luca Engstler, those drivers. Arjen Guwen, who was the last one to cross the line before the flag came out. Bortolotti can only manage 6th, so it's going to be 6th at best for him. Maro Engel at the moment is 9th, so they're all in the top 10. It's not disaster for either Bortolotti or Engel, but it's not brilliant either. Thomas Preining has a ding backed off out of it. At the moment, it's Kelvin van der Linde from Lucas Auer, from Arjen Guwen. They've all taken the flag now, and it is Kelvin van der Linde who takes pole position, the penultimate time that he'll drive an Audi in the DTM, at least for the foreseeable future. And you can see what it means to the South African.
Awesome. Awesome, mate. Awesome.
When Kelvin van der Linde got out of bed this morning, his dream scenario was pole position and Mirko Bortolotti not in the top 3.
And the championship gap is now down to 12 points.
Awesome drive. Awesome lap. Thanks.
The lap of his life. Kelvin van der Linde is on pole for the penultimate round of the championship. There is confirmation that he gets the gap down from 15 to 12 points. He's going to be started on pole. Bortolotti is going to be starting in 7th, and Engel, with a hill to climb now, a very steep one, is going to be starting 9th on the grid. The job is not yet done, but that's perfect. You can almost see, Brian, the relief writ upon Kelvin van der Linde's face. He just keeps having these long, slow blinks, doesn't he? Closing his eyes almost. Relief. I needed that. That was massive for the South African.
And that means he is going to be starting well ahead of his championship rivals in the race this afternoon. Yes, this is exactly what he had in mind this morning. And we said when the pressure's off Kelvin van der Linde, that is when he's at his most dangerous. He had nothing to lose. He gave it everything. Pole position, 3 mega valuable points. And just as important for him, his 2 rivals scoring nothing from that qualifying session.
Maro Engel has got one ally up there, his teammate, Lucas Auer, with his best qualifying of the year. Lucas Auer qualified 3rd at the Nürburgring, but he's averaged 9th on the grid this year. But what a week Lucas Auer is having. Only a big smile on his face yesterday when I congratulated him for his GT World Challenge Championship that he won with Maro Engel. And Team Winwood won the Teams Championship as well. He was really over the moon with that championship. And he's carried his form forward here. So 2nd on the grid for Lucas, and Arjen Guwen with his 2nd best qualifying, or his joint 2nd best qualifying, in 3rd place overall. Didn't quite get the pole position, but a mighty effort from him. And Luca Engstler once again shining, 4th place for him. Jack Aitken 5th, Thomas Preining 6th, Bortolotti 7th, Gounon, Engel and Tim rounding at the top 10. The BMWs once again struggling, and Schubert are going for the Teams Championship as well. Marco Wittmann, the best of the BMWs, 14th. René Rast, 16th. and Sheldon van der Linde in 19th place. Out of the car then gets Kelvin van der Linde. He has looked utterly focused every time I've seen him in the garages and the pit lane so far this weekend. He gets on the scales, make sure that the driver of the weight is added to the car to meet the minimum requirements. There is Maro Engel, who's going to be disappointed with 9th place for sure. It's been a bit of a messy weekend so far with the weather, but his teammate might be able to help him out, maybe take some points away from his title rivals, because Lucas Auer, with his best qualifying of 2024, will start second. There is Mirko Bortolotti, who, as I say, not a disaster. He doesn't have to win the races this weekend to win the championship. He's got something to play with. But he's got less to play with now, Brian, and he's also 7th on the grid, given that he was on provisional pole for much of that session. He'll be pretty down about that, I think.
For much of that session, it looked like it was going to be a Bortolotti pole, yes, and you thought, well, you know, this is going to be one hand on the championship trophy. Well, you can predict nothing in DTM, because that has just been turned upside down. Now Bortolotti is going to be in the traffic. When they head into turn 1, in theory, Kelvin van der Linde will have an empty track in front of him. Yeah, sorry, not pole, second, wasn't he? But it looked like it was going to be a good session for him. Van der Linde, though, nailed it. 1 minute, 48.797. Lucas Auer qualified second. Engin Nguyen third. Luca Engstler fourth. Jack Aitken fifth. Thomas Preining in 6th place. Last year's double winner, double pole sitter here on his way to the title at Hockenheim last season. Mirko Bortolotti 7th. Jules Gounon in 8th. Maro Engel 9th. And Niki Tim in 10th place. 7/10 of a second, covering those 10 drivers. Further back, 11th for Ricardo Feller, 12th for Arjun Maini. From Pereira was 13th, Marco Wittmann 14th, and then Max Powell 15th, René Rast 16th, but he came from 23rd to 3rd in the second race here at Hockenheim last year. 17th, Thierry Vermeulen, 18th, Clement Schmidt, back in 19th. Really disappointing season this for Sheldon van der Linde, and 20th place for Ben Durr. So that's the penultimate qualifying session of 2024 complete. Only driver to score points from that to get into the top 3 was the driver on the top of the timesheets, Kelvin van der Linde, in terms of the championship contenders. So he gets 3 points. That closes the gap now to 12 to Mirko Bortolotti, and he's going to be starting on pole, the South African, whereas back on the 4th row of the grid will be the Italian driver. But we're going to get probably very different track conditions for the afternoon, with it looking like it's going to be slicks for race 1 today. Right, let's get some reaction to a fascinating qualifying session with Verena.
And now I'm here with the pole setter, Kelvin van der Linde. You got a smile on your face. That's a fab job you did there. You collected some points, so now it's only 12 points behind the leader of the championship. And yeah, you're happy with that. Obviously, the best position. Also, Mirko is only P7, so you're going to go for this one.
Of course, we're going to go for it. I mean, I was just happy we could put on a show today. I really didn't want Mirko to have it too easy today. We've been putting pressure since yesterday in free practice, you know, just doing our thing, and we keep putting on the pressure, keep putting on a good show.
Oh, I'm sure, and I'm looking forward to that race. One more question about the tires. It was a bit of a strategy there, because some of you guys didn't quite get the grip there. So do you think that might also be a topic for the race?
I think it'll be dry for the race. I think in qualifying we just we took a gamble on the slick. Maybe the slick switched on at some point. We always knew that the wet tire, even drying conditions, would be pretty much a one-lap shootout before the tire starts overheating. So we always knew we could come back to the wet tire. So that's why we went on the slick so early and tried it. But it definitely wasn't the right tire today, and I'm very happy we got everything together.
Absolutely. Well, best of luck for the race, Kelvin. Thank you. And back to the commentators.
Thanks very much, Verena. Yeah, Brian, that is the sort of session where it can just fall away from you very, very quickly, isn't it? It's one of those sessions you're kind of relieved to get through with a decent result, I think, because you could easily, like Sheldon van der Linde, end up at the back of the grid. So to get pole position is a massive bonus.
Yes, it is, isn't it? And you think, well, a 20-minute session, that's plenty of time. It's amazing how quickly that slips away. And if you get the tyre strategy wrong, suddenly you can be out of time. As we ride on board with Kelvin van der Linde now, let's have a look at what will be the pole lap.
Yeah, this was it. So it's still 12 seconds slower than they'll be going when they get on slick tyres for the race, but still mighty quick this. So it's 4th gear through turn 1 at the Nordkurve in the dry on slick tyres. They'll be going slightly quicker than that at about 180 kilometres an hour. They get to 240 kilometres an hour and then make their way into the Bernie Ecclestone turn 2 where they drop down to 80 kilometres an hour. So that was the onboard lap that got pole position. Let's get some more now with Verena down in the pits.
And I'm here with the man who's starting in P3, Aycan Güven. Good job you did there in the qualifying, so obviously a good position for the race. What was it out like there? I mean, obviously it was a bit of a strategy in regards to the weather, but you guys are hoping for a dry race?
Yeah, I mean, the qualifying was tricky. We start with slick tires, and then I tell the team, okay, it will not work. Then we go back to wet, and yeah, at the end I did a good lap. The last lap, the tire didn't last anymore, so I think that it was too dry, so I could not improve. So I think it was close for sure, but I'm happy. After a hard season, we had a strong second part of the season, and now with the P3 best qualifying of the year, I think for the race we have good position.
Absolutely. Best of luck for the race. Thank you so much. And of course, we are all looking forward to a fantastic race. It's going to be very exciting because, as we all know, it's the grand finale this weekend, and we're looking forward to it so much. And it's going to be a tight battle, that's for sure. So you do not want to miss the race. See you later. Here are the highlights. Enjoy. Bye-bye.